For this talk, I will have three themes or three topics. The first is the higher education's third mission, and then we get to talk about my recent paper, which is a case study on extension and way forward and funding. Sentia Potentia Est is one of the most prominent quotations during the Age of Enlightenment in the 18th century, and that was quoted by Francis Bacon, the father of scientific thinking. And without him, we don't have the universities, we don't have the way we do our research that we know of now. During the Age of Enlightenment, it was sparked by the scientific revolution. Universities and educational systems, especially in Europe, had a massive change in terms of their springing out from the Renaissance era, wherein teachers are being taught, teach their students to memorize or do rote memorization, and a lot of teachings are centered on spirituality and religion and even superstition. During the Age of Enlightenment, our universities were transformed because this was the age of philosophy. We have the likes of Voltaire, Spinoza, Immanuel Kant, Rousseau, Descartes, even Benjamin Franklin, James Watt, who invented the steam engine, which ushered the first industrial revolution. All of them are talking and creating new ideas, discussing what's happening in the educational system, how to go about life in the universities. Now, 400 years later, in the 21st century, we know that the higher education sector is now the most influential and powerful institution that's able to advance society. It's the most powerful and influential because it possesses an enormous resource, the intellectual and knowledge resource. Faculty and students, all of them play a leading role in transmitting knowledge, allowing the utilization and commercialization of knowledge for economic development, creating the future citizens. All of higher education we have the stakeholder engagement, wherein we need the universities, the researchers and faculty to initially have a participatory and be engaged in a participatory process, wherein the stakeholders will have a voice in creating or conceptualizing extension programs, the quality of service, the sharing of best practices among universities. Without the participatory governance and participatory characteristics of extension, there will be no co-ownership between the stakeholders and the universities. Without co-ownership, without a big view of the extension program, there might not be any sustainable extension programs. And I can see that because we are funding a lot of extension projects at Shed, and I'm looking at projects that are currently given hundreds of millions, but they have not really created an effect in their communities. We also talk about extension in terms of industrial extension. We don't have a CMO, a Jet Memorandum Order on industrial extension yet. We're building one. And apparently we often ask our universities, what is your role in spurring economic development through your extension program, through your research program? The answer is, we don't see any impact in terms of economic impact, in terms of helping an industry. Very little. And that has been the concern, not just by CHED, not just by our office that handles extension, but also by the Department of Trade and Industry, IUFIL, which is in charge of IP utilization and commercialization. Somehow, there's a bridge that leads to nowhere in terms of doing research and extension. Our universities are not connected with the market. Most of the products of intellectual property, they're too raw to be commercialized. And when funding ends, activities on research and development also gets terminated. One of the findings of the USAID strike was the problem with industry and academic partnership is because lies in the lack of communication, lack of relationship building between the two sectors. We have one sector that is focused on producing patents, on producing publications and teaching, and one sector which is involved in producing money. And that gap probably, again, as is a common feature with community extension, maybe the type of quality of service. As you can see, in industry, if they give you money, you have 6 months to produce something that is profitable, or else you drop the project. In the university, we give you 2 years, and they ask you for extension for 6 months. And then you get a headache because they're not even producing papers. Or when they produce papers, they stop and they create another research because there's another set of funding. And then they forget about the previous research that could have led to big innovations. Meron kaming patent, ibenta na lang natin. And that's one primary things that we would hear from our researchers. Agencies would fund, in terms of millions, big bucks, to create technologies, and nothing will happen because they never even asked industry to, or they never talked with industry in the conceptualization stage. Another limitation is that our academy doesn't think that the extension program is really important. They're questioning the scholarship of extension. They always think, akong tama, ako magaling. I'm always right, I'm brilliant. And I cannot use extension as a way to promote, to get promotion, to get tenureship, to be a prominent professor. And that is one reason probably why most of the extension programs in our universities, they do not have a voice and they do not get the full support by the administration. Especially now that we are forcing our researchers to work very hard. Because in the Philippines, our research output is really one of the weakest in Asia. The best universities' publication or knowledge generation output of Philippine universities, the top Philippine universities, they do not even come close to that of Malaysians. Last year, this is data from 2016. De La Salle University produced only 430 publications, followed by UP Diliman, 378, followed by Ateneo, 113, and followed by UST, 83. And compare them to Malaysian universities, which produce an annual output of around 6,000 to 5,000 publications per year. The total publication output of the Philippines, if you sum them up, they could not even come close to the Act 1, the yearly output of Malaysia, of one of the Malaysian top research universities. The biggest university, most prominent university that we have in the Philippines is UP. In its 125 years of existence, if we sum up all the publications of all UP researchers and professors have produced in more than a century, and 125 years, they do not even add up to the annual output of one research university in Malaysia. To think the Philippines used to be one of the most prominent universities, or Philippines has one of the most prominent universities 30 years ago, wherein our ASEAN neighbors trooped to the Philippines to learn. And when they come back, they build and strengthen their own universities in their respective countries. Now, Philippines has one of the lowest output in the ASEAN. We are very thankful that God has created Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos are. For without these three countries, we are at the deep bottom of the list. And if you look at the graph, Philippines has only an annual growth of less than 8% as compared to Vietnam, which is an annual growth of 12%. Philippines has relatively a flat line in terms of research outlooks. In medicine, when you call it a flat line, it means you're dead. And when you are dead, we are now pushing really so hard, our researchers. We are expecting that there will be value for money in every peso that we give. The government gives the university to produce patent. And so, more than ever, our universities are pressured to publish and to generate knowledge, to pursue the second mission, which is research. But they do not realize, or perhaps some of them fail to realize, that the intellectual resource, even if it's small, because it doesn't produce a lot of papers, they can make a genuine difference. Because they can make a genuine difference to society and to the lives of their neighbors. Higher education has a moral and ethical responsibility to contribute to the quality of life in the community, to ensure that our industries will be fed with new ideas and innovation to create new products that will lead to employability. With some of our richest universities in the Philippines situated in the cities, and just a stone throw away from their campus are communities of squalor, poverty, that begs us to ask, how can our universities fulfill the first mission of teaching moral and civic virtues unless they cannot change the conditions of their neighbors? The third mission, extension. And as we pressure our universities to publish and to teach, we all, many faculties and researchers question the scholarship of extension. And is there scholarship in extension? Boyer's model of extension says there is. And that we can create extension programs that will not be merely community outreach, but something that can be validated, disseminated, studied, and put or absorb more rigor in terms of their programs. It's unfortunate that our disciplines, they are the ones that define the priorities. It is also unfortunate that it's the funding agencies that will define the priorities. Because once these funding agencies define the priorities, our universities, for them to move, because money is very important, funding is very important, they will have to follow the agenda of the funding agencies. And we forget about the process of doing extension program, the participatory process, the co-ownership, and all those factors. We tend to forget about them because we want money. And that goes to my second presentation. I published a paper, and it was published in the Malaysian Scopus Index Journal. It took us 1 year, 1.5 years before it got published. And the paper is entitled Measuring the Impact of an Academic Community Extension Program in the Philippines. By the way, I'm a molecular biologist, I'm a neuroscientist, but I'm a lifelong learner. So we have to look, so I'm also interested in the impact of extension. And as you can see in this figure, here's that's the Technological Institute of the Philippines. And surrounding it are informal settlers. The program of extension requires that that the university or the college will have to talk with all the leaders in the local community. And after discussing it with leaders in the local community, they will have to create programs where in the different disciplines, all the disciplines in that college will have to work together to address the needs. After 3 years of extension, there was a study conducted, which I am already part of the school, wherein we measured the impact of extension. In this graph, you can see the needs assessment, and here are the pictures of the faculty engaged in the extension activity. And in measuring the impact of extension, our psychometrician and industrial psychologists created an inventory called the Community Outcome Scale, or the panukat ng kinalabasan para sa komunidad, which is divided into 3, from attitude, knowledge, attitudes, and lifestyle. What did we discover? We discovered that we divided the participants into 3. Those who seldomly go to the extension programs, those are occasional participants, and those that are regular participants. Those who are seldomly attending the extension programs, they scored low in knowledge, attitude, and lifestyle. And those that are occasional and regular participants, they scored significantly higher in terms of knowledge, attitude, and lifestyle. Note that those who are in the regular attendees, they scored lower compared to those who are in the occasional attendees. We don't know what would have caused the decline, but what we think is the impact here is that if you are an occasional attendee, it means it's an indication of lifelong learning. And lifelong learning provided by the university or the higher education institution through its extension program has created an impact to the society. What is more important than creating inventories and quantitative research are the stories of these people. There's one faculty or one household who said, or a woman said, they were able to donate more money to charity. They were able to help a neighbor when that neighbor got sick through the new livelihood programs that was created in the community. Now let's go to the way forward and funding. In 1988, there was a Bologna Magna Carta Universitatum where all the university professors, chancellors, and rectors in Europe signed a document that states the tradition of the university. In that document, they said that universities are tasked to spread knowledge among the younger generation, and that they must also serve society as a whole. There's a need. They articulated the need for the new academy, wherein research should be transformed to discovery. Teaching should be transformed to learning. Service will have to be transformed to engagement. And that new academy should be housing, or should be the hub where dynamic thinkers and problem solvers will connect, collaborate, and lead the change for the 21st century. How do we overcome the barriers of scholarship and engagement? We have to think about how to link it up with traditional tenure and promotion expectations. There's also lack of training for our faculty. We don't have training to develop and sustain relationships with community, personality development. We don't know how to, we don't have provisions or policies that will incorporate the scholarship of engagement in our scholarly agenda, in our research agenda. We may not know how to evaluate scholarly works, especially in DC 461. There's also limited resources, very few amount of money coming in for extension programs in our universities. And we cannot link strategically extension with promotion and tenure categories. We are asking, how do we incorporate in our policies at CHED the models and guidelines for collaboration? Within this collaboration will be platforms of mutually beneficial exchange of knowledge and resources in the context of partnership and reciprocity. How do we make extension attractive and sexy to students, to faculty, to universities, and to its community partners? We have funding for extension. Compared to our funding for research, our funding for extension, the pool of funds is rather very small. We have released the call for proposals for our agri-fisheries extension program. Those of you who are members of the NAFES and Deocaris, or Deocaris and PIAFs, we have a deadline, August 31, 2018. Maximum grant size is 10 million. If you don't meet the deadline, we don't accept your proposals. We're now going to be very strict. We are now creating a new CMO that will dictate funding for industry extension, and we are partnering with British Council. This new program called the Grant Innovations Grant for Academic Industry Partnership, GIGA, sexy, requires that our universities collaborate with universities in the UK. At the same time, they have to find a collaborative partner in industry. Our CMO will be released by November. As you can see here, here's a screenshot of our Facebook page, so please like us on Facebook so you will know the future grants that we will be offering. I would also like to challenge the universities here to join the Journal Incentives Program. We are providing grants to make our scholarly journals attain international scholarly standards and be indexed in Scopus, Web of Science, and Access Citation Index. For those journals, we are providing around $500,000 pesos per year for 3 years for you to develop. And we are coming up with a new CMO, which again will be released this November, which is now funding for new titles. And we would like to suggest, perhaps, that we can create the Philippine Journal on Higher Education Extension. And lastly, as colleges and universities are pressured to act, one more minute, and for them to act accordingly and to overcome the burdens of, we need to overcome the burdens of history and tradition. We are creating grants. Our research grants are requiring all our capture proposals to be as interdisciplinary and as collaborative as possible. Because if we do not if we not accept the contributions of the different disciplines, if we do not collaborate, then that's a sign of the fragmentation of our disciplines. In fact, the over-specialization, the division of arts and science, they have led to isolate our university faculties from society. In 1902, OECD, or the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, published in its report, The Universities and its Communities, and the Status of Extension. And its epitaph says, communities have problems, universities have departments. This is one reason why our universities have not really contributed to our society, to the community, to the industry. We are unintegrated. We are fragmented. We are internally conflicted. And those virtues, or those characteristics, are the ones that are working against us in solving highly complex problems that are of society and of humanity. So what we are now going to do is to convert and transform a new research agenda from an era that is focused on incentivization and recognition and publication to an era where the National Higher Education Research Agenda focused on the person, with a humanistic character. Our NERA 3 aims to create a strategy, and this is the preamble. And I'm very honored to be the one writing the National Higher Education Research Agenda. And its preamble says, we are creating a strategy that will spawn the critical mass of 21st century Filipino researchers with curious and creative minds, diversity of talents, empathy, a beautiful word, empathy, and international visibility that will push for the preservation of Filipino culture, inclusive prosperity, good governance, peaceful and healthy environment. And as a flagship program of NERA, we are launching the Research and Innovation Excellence Program 2018 to 2024. It's a 6-year project. We're in. We are bringing universities and converting the Fernet and Hershey's, the Philippine Higher Research Network, in the higher education regional research centers to a next stage of evolution, the creation of the Higher Education Network for Research and Innovation Excellence. This will be the predecessor in 6 years of the veritable Philippine Research and Innovation University Network. We have been talking about research universities, but we have not really defined what a research university is. During this program of 6 years, we will have the clash. The top 40 research and innovation universities will have to cooperate and collaborate to produce patents, extension programs, innovations, and publications. And every 2 years, we will drop you from the list, and we will narrow the list until we reach 16. 2018, we have 40. 2020, we'll have 32 universities. 2022, 24, and 2016, 2024, 16. To end for my last slide, I open up with the quotation of Francis Bacon, knowledge is power. Ironically, this quotation from the Age of Enlightenment seems to be truncated because the real sense of knowledge is power is that knowledge is power for the relief of man's estate. Francis Bacon actually meant that the knowledge in the universities, we must extend it to our communities. Thank you. So please like us on Facebook, Ched Research, if you want to get the latest updates on